it's Elizabeth over at Embroidery Designs, and today we are going to do the tutorial on how to do the in the hoop fanny pack. This is the double zipper fanny pack. There is also the other one, which is a single zipper, but this is the one that you all specifically asked me to do a tutorial on, so this is the one I'm going to do the tutorial on. So go ahead, gather your stuff, and let's do this together. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to hoop your stabilizer. I already have mine hooped. We're going to do the first hoop, which is hoop 1, which is going to be for your handles, these guys. I'm going to go over exactly how I do them. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth. So once you hoop your stabilizer, go ahead. You can set it aside. Right now I'm actually just going to run it and put it on my hoop really quick. Next, you're gonna cut 4 5x squares. This one is the same for every hoop. So whether you're doing the 5x7, the 6x10, or the 6x6, the 8x8, the 8x12, it's going to be the same size for the first hoop. 5x5 squares. I went ahead, I grabbed my batting, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 of my 5x5 squares. 1, 2, oh, there it is. Set them aside. Take 2. I use a spray adhesive. Go ahead and spray your batting. I'm not terribly worried that it's going to go over. Go ahead. Go ahead and just cut your excess batting. It does not have to be perfect, but I'm a perfectionist. All right, so you have your 2 with batting. Go ahead. You're actually going to set those aside. Now, we're actually going to go ahead. We're going to go to our hoop. We're going to run our first step to place our fabric down. All right, so now that we're at our hoop, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run our very first step. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our fabric while it's in the hoop. Grab your fabric that doesn't have the batting on it. So after we do the tack down, we're going to run our next step is going to be for our webbing. Alright, so this next step is very crucial. What we're going to do is we're going to now put our webbing on. So you're going to take your webbing. You're going to take about 5 inches. So what I did is I cut 2 36, so 1 yard. I cut 2. You can cut more, you can cut less. If you pre-measure your person, you can cut to their actual dimensions. If you don't know, I usually cut them 36 by 36. But you're going to take about 5 inches, and you're going to make sure the end sticks out 5 inches past the narrow side. So this is the narrow side right down here. And you're going to make it go 5 inches. Now again, you're going to take about 5 inches tape it. Now we'll take it back to our hoop. We're going to run our tack down to tack our webbing down. So here you can see your webbing is going to hang off. That's okay if you have a single needle machine. Just make sure it doesn't get underneath of your machine. Multi-needle, it's pretty easy because you can just kind of push it out. Alright, now that we're done with that step, I'm just going to move some of this over. You're going to take your pieces with your batting. You're going to put batting side up, right side down, batting side up. You're going to run your tack down. Alright, now we're going to take it back to our table and we're going to cut it and unhoop it. Alright, so now we have now we have finished it. We're going to actually go ahead, we're going to unhoop it now and we're going to cut. So I like to cut one at a time. Now, when you're cutting this, you're going to make sure you do not cut your webbing at all. You're not cutting any webbing. And we're going to cut around using a 1/4, about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that way it gives us a little bit of room to work with. Now that your first handle is cut, what you're going to do is you're going to flip it inside out. And your first handle is now done. So now go ahead, repeat that for the other one. If you get any of your masking tape stuck, don't worry, it tears easily right out. And there you have it. There's your second handle, so now you have a pair. Now we're going to set these aside. And we will go ahead, we're going to rehoop our hoop, and we'll actually go ahead and get started on our bag. Alright, so now we hooped our new stabilizer and we're going to go ahead and get started on our next bag. So for zippers, I generally always use a 14 inch or 14 to 16. I never use anything smaller, but some people like to use the smaller ones for the smaller hoops. So I recommend for the 5x7 and the 6x6, you can go ahead and use a 10 or an 8 inch. Everything else, I would definitely recommend using 14 or larger. And also, you want them to be the nylon ones, because if you use metal teeth in your machine, it will not like it. It will break your needles. I've done that before, and it's not fun. So let's talk about a little bit about our pieces before we go ahead and get started. I have my batting already for it. For your front top part of your bag, you are going to be folding your fabric. So you're going to make sure you have 2 folded edges instead of just one. And for this in particular bag, the top, I'm making the 8x12. So the top part of the bag, you want to be right around 2 1/4 inches. So I went ahead and I folded mine. Mine is just about 2 1/4 inches, if not maybe just a little bit more on this side. But you're going to fold it like this, and I recommend pressing it. So that way it doesn't really move and you don't have to finicky it. Or when we get to the step, I'll show another way of measuring without having to bring out your ruler, because I know some people you don't like to use, you don't want to bring out your ruler or your little tape to nitpick everything. You just want a solid line. I'll show you guys how to do that as well. You're going to need 2 pieces, one for your outside, one for your inside. If you don't want to line your bag, do not worry about this inside piece. You can skip this piece. Then you want to get your front piece. So for the 8x12, which I am making, it calls for a 13x10. This is a 13x7. 1, 2. This is a 13x8. I'm actually going to be folding it over just slightly because I don't want to waste too much of this fabric since it's really nice fabric and I didn't have that much left. So this is also a way you can also save a little bit on fabric. You don't have to use so much. This is such super cute fabric. Then you're going to take your inside lining piece. Again, if you didn't want to line your bag, do not worry about the next 13x10 piece. This is going to be your inside pocket. Now, if you were not lining your bag, you still have to do this step. So you're still going to have to cut this piece of fabric because this is the pocket that's going to seal the front pocket from the back pocket. So there's no movement between the two. And then you have your back and your back lining piece. Again, if you're not lining it, do not worry about this part. The lining piece anyway. Now, a lot of people have asked the difference between hot dog style and hamburger style. This is hot dog. Hot dog is lengthwise. So since this is 13, the length is 13. Hamburger is that way. So basically the fatter sides together will be hamburger and the skinnier sides are going to be hot dog. I did put a diagram in the how-to as well. So let's go ahead and move to our machine. We're going to put our placement stitch down for our zippers. All right, now that the zippers are, boxes are stitched, let's go ahead and bring it to our table and we'll put our zippers on. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move our zippers and put them on. I definitely recommend putting them on how you usually open your zipper. So I tend to open my zipper from left to right. A lot of people do go from right to left. So predominantly if you're a right hand, I believe it's from left to right, and then if you're left hand, it's from right to left. But I would just pick one way and kind of just stick with it. So next you're going to put your zipper right inside your box. What I like to do is I like to always just masking tape one side. Kind of smooth it out a little bit. And then mask tape the other side at the same time. That way I get less movement. Now that we have our zippers, I don't know if you guys can see that. You can see now that they're in the box. We're gonna run our tack down, which will go right on top. And let's go ahead and move on over. Alright, so since we did the tack down, or we did the placement stitching for the zippers, we're going to go ahead and we're going to run the tack down for the top part of our bag. Alright, now that we ran the tack down, we're going to go ahead and bring this back to our table. I'm going to show you guys a couple tricks on how to do this top part. Alright, so I want to quickly show you guys really quick on how to do this. So if you want to measure it out like I do, you're more than welcome. But one thing you can do is you can go ahead and just take your cut. I'm just going to open this up really quick. If it wants to cooperate. And you can place it on top when you're doing that part. And you can take like a pen, one of the sewing pens that erases like when you put steam or something on it, and you can just mark where you feel the zipper and write it down, and then when you go to the iron, fold it on those edges. And go ahead. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to spray adhesive this. Because I tend to get a little paranoid sometimes with my bags. Because I don't like them moving. So, now we're going to go take this back to the hoop and we're going to run our placement stitch. Alright, now that we're back at the hoop, we're going to go ahead and run the placement stitch. Now that we're done with the placement stitch, we're going to go ahead and put our inside lining in. Alright, so we ran our placement stitch. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our hoop, flip it over. You can see where that placement stitch was. Again, for this in particular piece, you're going to have to most likely measure it just because it can be a little finicky. You can go ahead and you can use the pen and mark it where you see just above these lines. Go ahead and get your tape. We're going to tape it down. I'm going to spray a little on it too. Just to help it from not moving. Too little. Right, now that we're done with that, we're going to bring it back to our hoop. We're going to run the placement stitch for this. Now that we brought it back to our hoop, we're going to go ahead. It is now underneath the hoop. We're going to run our placement stitch. Now that we ran the placement stitch for that, we're actually going to go ahead, we're going to leave this still in the hoop, and we're going to run our placement for the front part of our bag right here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our front fabric. What I did is I just put a little I just ironed it a little bit and put a little bit of a seam. So that way when you fold it, you can just fold it right up to the zipper. Once we got it in place where we want it, we're going to go ahead and run the stitch. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take it out of the hoop and we're going to put our lining piece on. Alright, now that we have it stitched in place, we're going to go ahead and flip it over. We're going to take our lining piece. We're just going to put it just above. That looks good. I'm going to tape it in place. Alright, now that we have it in place, we're going to put it back on the hoop carefully, and then we're going to go ahead and run the placement for this. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and run the placement. Alright, so the next steps are pretty critical. As you can see, I did kind of mess up a little bit, but that's okay. This is just for me anyway, so. First thing you're going to do is you're going to go to your bottom zipper. We're going to move it halfway. I like to put a hole right there. I'm going to flip it over. And we're going to cut out our zipper pocket. This way it adds a very nice finishing touch. So if you're selling these, this adds a very, very nice finishing touch. Because then you don't see any stabilizer. Alright, now once that part is done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our pocket. Now there's a couple of different ways you can do the pocket. One of the ways you can do the pocket is you can just go ahead and put it on, put it just above this line right here, and run your placement stitch. But if you do it that way, you will still see the stitch line on the back inside your main pocket. Well, another way, if you don't want to see that stitch line, go ahead, flip it up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty much line it up to where that line is. Tape. This will be your best friend for this step. Now we're going to take it back to our hoop. We're going to run the lining. I'll show you how it's done. Alright, so we got our inside pocket lining in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this step. I'm going to kind of keep my hand underneath. That way I can keep it as smooth as possible so that the top part of the pocket does not fold over. Alright, next what we're going to do is we're going to take it out of the hoop. And I'm going to show you how we can fold it back over and how I secure it. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do another critical step. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to flip it back over. We're going to remove this tape. Because tape likes to stick to me. So we're going to chew. We're going to take our pocket. We're going to actually fold it down. And that's how you get a no seam showing for your pocket. Very simple, very straightforward. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to flip it back over. We're going to take this part of the zipper. And we're going to unzip it halfway. Now I get this zipper, I tend to just give a little bit of help so it doesn't bounce around underneath the fabric. And then I go ahead, try and get in between my zippers, poke my hole, flip it over, my hole's right here, and I cut. So I'm going to cut my zipper out. Alright, we have both zippers now officially moved. If you look carefully, you can see the inside of your pocket right there. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to run the placement stitches for our handles. So let's go back over to the hoop and I will show you how we get this done. So what we're going to do next is we're going to run the placement for the handles, and we're actually going to do this part all in the hoop. This is going to be the fun part. Alright, so we're actually going to take it out of the hoop because I'm going to show you guys on the table how to go ahead and attach your handles. Right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a handle, and place it right about there. Take our other one. We're going to place it right about there. At this point, leave these dangling forward. I'll show you what we do after this step on how to secure these in the hoop so we can go ahead and put our batting and our outside pieces on. Alright, now that we got our handles in, let's go ahead and run our placements. Alright, so I have it set up in your guys' file for it to run one at a time. We're going to go ahead and run the other one. Alright, now that we have our handles in place, we're going to take our straps and we're going to roll them up. Alright, now that we have them rolled up, what we're going to do, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to take our outside back lining. Our batting, I'm going to cut it to what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and spray it. I can use this piece of batting for something else later. And that's how I attach my batting. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to get our hoop again. I guess I'm going to have to get more tape for that one. He doesn't want to stay down. We are going to take our fabric, we're going to put right sides together, face down. If your fabric is directional like this one, make sure your fabric is going the same direction as this one. So since this one's going up, I'm going to make sure this one's going up. And then I'm just going to place it on top. Now we're going to take this back to the machine. We're going to go ahead and run the tack down for this part. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to run the step that seals the back to the front. Alright, so now that we did that, we're gonna put our back inside lining on, and that will be our last step in the hoop. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead, take our last piece of fabric. One thing I do want to point out is if you're using a directional fabric or a printed fabric and not a solid color fabric for your pieces, what you're gonna make sure your printed side is facing inside of the bag, and if you're for this lining piece, you want to make sure your printed side is also facing inside of the bag. But let's say you were wanting to put like this mini fabric and you are putting the mini fabric inside of the bag, you want to make sure it's facing inside of the bag, the printed side. If you're using a solid or a print that doesn't have a front or a back, you're fine to just put it on however. But if you are using any of those types of fabrics, I highly recommend making sure you put it on the inside of your bag. And if you, on the last, the step before this one, if you put your inside lining fabric on that instead and you put your back fabric on this one, your back fabric's going to be on the inside of your bag and your lining fabric's going to be on the outside. I've done that a couple of times. So now we're going to take it back to our hoop for our final step. Alright guys, we're in the home stretch. We're on the final step. Alright, so we're done with everything that, all the embroidery parts. Now let's go ahead and bring it to our table. We'll unhoop it and I will show you how to finish up your bag. Alright, so we are now done with everything in the hoop. So now what we're going to do, we're going to unhoop it. Alright, so now that we have unhooped, I have flipped it to the back. And the reason why is you see this pocket, I'm going to cut right up to that line, but leaving about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to flip it back over and cut. It's going to be a little on the harder side to cut, just because of everything you have going. Also, do not cut your webbing. This is very critical. We do not cut this webbing piece. I'll explain why shortly. First, let's go ahead and get your bag cut. If you need to, take your time cutting. It is not liking me today. Okay. So now that we're done cutting, I am going to put that up, put my webbing, and we're going to leave about a ½ inch on my webbing. Now, the reason why you leave your webbing is if, so you want to give it stability. So if you cut too close, what's going to happen is it's going to fray, and it's just going to be a big hot mess, and you may lose your, some of your webbing. Another tip is, if you want, you can take a lighter, gently roll it across, and you can actually heat seal it, because this is a bit of a plastic, so you can kind of melt it and it'll heat seal it. So the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to flip our bag inside out. The easiest way I've learned for bags is I get my corners first, because for some reason I feel like if you do your corners, your top corners that is, your bag will just slide out. And you won't have pop seams. I've noticed that. If I do it this way, my seams don't pop. I use my fingers. Sorry. I use my fingers to help me. And now look. See? I didn't pop a seam at all. Next, what we're going to do is you're going to want to secure your inside of your bag. I like to use hem tape. So you're going to take your hem tape, you're going to stick it on. And it's just like a sticky fabric adhesive. You can also, if you want to, you can run it through the sewing machine. You can hand stitch it. You can do heat and bond. I know some people prefer heat and bond over anything else, which is fine. That's totally a preference. I love my hem tape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this on the inside. Sometimes the hem tape does not want to come off, so you kind of have to convince it. And it's extremely sticky. So what I like to do is I like to pinch it, fold it over, pinch my middle, and then kind of work my way getting my fingers out. That's how sticky it is. And there you go. Simple and sealed. You would never know. Next, you're going to take your zipper. There's all your stuff for your fanny pack. Flip it. Woo, one came unraveling. Take your tape off. You don't need that anymore. Look at that. Your fanny pack is coming to life. And see, there's your inside pocket. So you don't even see your pocket on the inside. There is your fully lined inside pocket. So this hand's on the inside, as you can see. I mean, how cool is that? You have two pockets. And now you have your fanny. So next, you're gonna grab your buckle. This is where the only part that's somewhat tricky. Actually, I'm gonna leave those together. You put your buckle in. Am I doing this right? There you go. There's the one section of your buckle. And then the other part that you're gonna wanna sew is right here. And this is where I said you can possibly cut, because that's pretty big. That's pretty big. So it's up to you on how far you want it to go. But then you just sew, which I'm going to run quickly over to my machine. I'm going to do a quick stitch, and I'll be right back. If you do want to secure this part more, go ahead and you can do like the little square with the cross, the X through it, and that will secure it up a little bit more so it's not super flimsy. I just did something really quick. This is just something for me, so I just did it really quick and it holds pretty well. And then you can cut your excess off and you can use it for like handles on the play bag or something. But there you have it. Then the hoop fanny. Alright guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial for the In the Hoop fanny pack. Super easy, double zippers, took maybe hour and a half to make. Super simple once you get the hang of them. Alright guys, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the fanny pack in the description below. Feel free to ask me questions, send me emails. I am here to help you guys, and I hope you guys have a good one.